Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to St. Peter Restoration Community Christian Ministries as we commemorate by film titled An Afternoon to Honor Jessie and Daisy Brown. We welcome all of you and we appreciate your participation. At this time, we're going to ask you to please stand as the honor guard proceed to honor our guests, Jessie and Daisy Brown. National heroes, as they model what it is to endure and persevere through racism, as we honor Jessie Brown. You may be seated. This afternoon we'll have a series of speakers who will highlight important events in Jessie and Daisy Brown's life. I'm going to ask each one of you to speak directly in the mic as I call out your name. And I say, what say ye, Reverend Ralph Anthony? What say ye of Jessie Brown? Standing on behalf of those who stood for us, it gives me great privilege and pleasure to acknowledge the heroicness of Jessie Leroy Brown, whose hero was Jesse Owens, and who as a child was in the cotton fields of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and an airplane swooped down. He looked up and he says, wow, I want to become an American pilot. And I remember my days in the cotton fields where one day I was in a classroom looking at a cotton boll, green, wondering how do you get clothes out of a plant. And the next day, I was being taught how to pick 600 pounds of cotton a day. We were taught by the belt. It was a work ethic, and it was also training from Lord God Almighty through the institution of the church, through the blood spilled by Jesus Christ that created the idea of our inalienable rights. Jesse Lee Brown pursued his dream. He went on to Ohio State to become educated. And when he got into the military, he applied for becoming a pilot. And he was told
American Negroes, you're not going to become a pilot. What you should do is learn to be a mechanic. As they told me in the 9th grade by a counselor whose son was missing, MIA, missing in action in Vietnam. He told me that your academic background doesn't warrant for you to study electronics or natural science. Why don't you do like your friends and take auto mechanics or wood shop? My reply was, I don't like auto mechanics or wood shop. His reply, you're uppity little nigger, aren't you? Then, Jessie Leroy Brown decided, along with Captain Hutner, who was the one that crashed his airplane, to go rescue him during the war, and that acknowledgement of the heroics of Jessie Leroy Brown and his wife Daisy Brown is still in the background. Therefore, we're standing today on behalf of continuing that work. That's what I say.
Historian G. Slade, what say ye of Daisy Brown?
I say ye, Daisy Brown, it is an honor to be here today to pay homage to her, to another strong African-American woman like Sojourner Truth, like Mary McLeod Bethune, like Rosa Parks, and of course, the well-known wife of Dr. Martin Luther King. Strong women, yes, leaders in their own right, but very supportive of their spouse, supportive of their families, supportive of their communities, and yes, patriots for the United States of America. Daisy Pearl Nix, born April 26, 1927, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Daisy was born into a Christian family. Her parents were members of the Antioch Baptist Church. She was the eldest of 5 children. Pearl, or Daisy, had a vision, education, and to be a good wife or a good community worker. She graduated in 1946 from Eureka High School. The same year, she married her beloved classmate, Leroy Brown, Jessie Leroy Brown. To that union was born one child, a girl. And later on, Jessie, still spirited with his dream to become a Navy pilot. His anchor was, of course, Daisy, very supportive of her husband and his vision to once serve his country in that capacity as a fighter pilot. There were times when her husband was at his lows. And of course, you know what the wife's position is, to support her husband, to be the foundation for him to stand on, to be the foundation for the family in sickness and in health and in well, bad times and good times. Times when it seems that there was no silver lining, but Daisy Pearl had a lining for her husband. Stay steadfast, Leroy. Your time will come. God has a plan. And as we were taught from children, and we still preach that in our family, that time will come. It is not your time. Well, that time did come. He became what we know today as the first African-American naval pilot. But Daisy was left behind to raise the child. She worked, And of course, she had a thought of pursuing her education. Remember, she graduated from high school. Well, in 1950, that awful time, that dark period in Daisy's life, she lost her beloved Jessie Leroy Brown. But out of that darkness came light, for there were those who surrounded her and inspired her by telling her the history of her husband's service. Mr. Herdner and others surrounded her like a village protecting a child. And guess what happened? That silver lining. Funds were raised and the monies were donated. And what Daisy Pearl Nix Brown did, she pursued the dream and the promise to her husband to complete her education. And that she did. She gained a master's degree, went on later to be a teacher for West Point, and then she returned back to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And that's where she, for over 30 years, taught in public school. But she didn't just stop there. She was a community servant. So she gave all she had in assisting with policy, with change. She served on the council there in Hattiesburg for change with the library, and so forth. Many young people were recipients of Daisy Pearl Nix Brown Thorne's educational leadership, her empowerment, and succeeding in educating the next generation. So I say ye today, it is a pleasure to honor Miss Daisy Pearl Nix Brown Thorne. I say ye.
Let's see. Sunday night, 3 December 1950. My own dear sweet angel. I'm so lonesome I could just boo-hoo. But I try to restrain myself and think of the fun we're going to have when we do get together. So only a few tears escape now and then. I love you so very much, my darling. The last few days, we've been doing quite a bit of flying, trying to help slow down the Chinese communists and to give support to some Marines who were surrounded when the Chinese launched their big drive. Knowing that he's helping these poor guys on the ground, I think every pilot on here would fly until he dropped in his tracks. My biggest hope still is that somehow, through the mercy of God, this war can come to a close without us getting into an all-out war with China. Know what, darling? I love you with all my heart and soul. I'm so deeply and completely in love with you until nothing else in life matters to me at all except you, angel. Sometimes this loneliness just wrings the tears of my aching heart. Often when I climb into my rack at night, all the loneliness of the day seems to descend upon me, and I'm haunted by seemingly 1,000 sweet memories of you. Don't be discouraged, angel. Believe in God and believe in Him with all your might, and I know that things will work out all right. We need Him now like never before. Have faith with me, darling, and He'll see us through. I honestly dread going to bed, but I usually dream of you, so I'll manage to make it until we share our bed together again. Darling, pray that it'll be soon. I'll write again as soon as I can. I'll love you forever. Your devoted husband, lovingly and completely yours forever, Jessie.
Captain Ed Sullivan, what say ye of Tom Hutner? Good afternoon. Good to see all you folks. I'm honored and I am blessed by this congregation of the Baptist Church to join in some of your greatest civil rights leaders in Bakersfield. You know, we met at a restaurant, Reverend Ralph Anthony, D. Slade, and myself, and we reached down in the cracks of history, and we found this very important story for America about Jessie and Daisy Brown. And we brought the story to the senior pastor, Oscar Anthony, and he bestowed on us this great gift. The hand of God is at work here to bring this story for closure for the Brown family. And it all was involved during their lives, their young, youthful lives, a fellow named Captain Tom Hudner. If you were to compare Tom Hudner to Ensign Jessie Brown, it would have been the exact opposite of an upbringing. Captain Tom Hudner, from a family that owned a chain of grocery stores in Fall River, Massachusetts, were allowed to send their Hudner children to private schools, Phillips Academy, and be raised up in a very Christian family. And one day, after his appointment as a captain and a pilot, would see Jessie Brown, the oddest figure in the pilot's locker room, an African American with his pilot wings. And Tom Hudner, in front of all the white pilots who were avoiding Jessie, walked the entire room with his hand outstretched, and he said, "Jessie Brown, welcome. Welcome, Jessie Brown." Jessie was overwhelmed. He intentionally was shy because he didn't want to appear out of place. Jessie was enamored to Thomas Hudner from that day on. God put them together for some strange reason. And to talk about Tom Hudner being born in 1924 and going through his youth to graduate, I think it's important for us to just consider the hand of God in the moments that this story evolved. You know, I originally said to Pastor Oscar Anthony, why, after all of the struggle of racism and that steady support that D. Slade brought out about Daisy's presence, that fabric of the Baptist family, always there to help him, just, remind him, you come all this way for your dream, you got to keep on. So the week before Jessie Brown died in December 1950, Jessie Brown logged more miles than any other pilot. So he had to be in Tom Hudner's position as the squad leader, the center of the squadron. First African-American naval pilot, first ever African-American squad leader. Now Tom Hudner's on the wing in Jessie's place. This particular week, Jessie is the leader of the logged miles. They're in formation, they're flying. It's the same week the Chinese entered the war to support North Korea. And a whole bunch of army Chinese guys with rifles are walking through the jungle. And Jessie Brown was flying the squadron over them. And one lucky rifle shot hit his fuel line. After all Jessie endured, why did this happen? But it happened. Jessie's fuel was leaking, he had to crash land. Tom Hudner talked them all through it, how to dump your ordnances and crash. Tom was there all the time. So it was only natural when Jessie survived the crash and he waved like this. Tom smiled and told me, being a 20-year friend of his in Massachusetts and him serving on my Massachusetts World War II Memorial Committee, he said it was the greatest smile to know Jessie survived. So Tom Hudner crashed his plane. Now I'm just trying to enlighten the character of a man
a white man who crashed his plane to save a black man. It was Tom Hudner's unique character as a wonderful citizen, a wonderful Christian. He ran over as fast as he could. He knew Jessie, and Jessie's leg was pinned. So Tom Hudner did what he did, and God has his own wisdom on why Jessie's leg couldn't get pulled out, and the rest of it is the story. And when Tom Hudner was coming home, in the book, it was listed, when you crash your plane intentionally, you're court-martialed. But considering Jessie Brown's history and their friendship, Tom was given the Medal of Honor, Jessie the Navy Cross, Distinguished Service Award. So Tom was given a Hero's Welcome in Concord, Massachusetts, and they gave him this huge check, money. He didn't feel he deserved it. He was embarrassed. So he signed that entire check over to Daisy Brown towards her college education. That's the type of man he was. So to sum up my opportunity of remarks on Tom Hudner, I'd just like to say that in July of 2013, Captain Hudner went to North Korea and had a high level with the 3 top generals of North Korea. And it was pouring rain. They were trying to get him in parades, and it was pouring rain out. He was 89 years old. Tom was given a very unique invitation to come back in September when the rains are over, and we will assist you with the American Forensic Recovery Team of POW-MIA to bring Jessie remains home for closure for the Brown family. And Tom, being very frail at 89, turned 90 waiting for September. And he had always been there for me over a 20-year period, honoring veterans. And he whispered to me, the biggest regret in my life was not to bring the bones of Jessie Brown home. So that was in 2017. He was interned at Arlington National Cemetery. So it's a very appropriate to share the question with you. Is the offer of the North Korean 3 top generals to Captain Tom Hudner in July of 2013 still on the table to bring the bones of Jessie Brown home? I'd like to inject that if our representatives, the administration, could make an attempt, a professional attempt, with the forensic people, we all would have closure, that we did the best we could. So I'm so thankful of this service today to raise the awareness of Jessie and Daisy Brown. And hopefully we will stimulate our leaders to do a professional attempt so that we'll all feel closure. Whether we find them or not, a professional attempt to recover Jessie Brown and fulfill the offer they gave us in 2013 for Tom Hudner to return. I want to thank you all and Pastor Oscar Anthony for this opportunity for us to raise the awareness of Jessie and Daisy Brown.
This time we say to Captain Jim Jacobs, what say ye of Jessie Brown?
It is really an honor to be here You folks have no idea what we've been through. The PGR was started back in October of 25, back in Topeka, Kansas. There was a very nasty church back there that took it upon themselves to protest military funerals. A few members of the American Legion were riding by, and hearing the protests and the nasty signs, they decided not going to happen anymore. So they formed the Patriot Guard Riders. I joined in April 2006. And since then, we have over 400,000 members nationwide. And we live by 2 rules: honor our fallen veterans and respect the families of those veterans. 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to be part of Raul Guerrera's KIA return from Vietnam. He crashed his plane due to weather just outside of Da Nang. 52 years later, through all the forensic, the digging, they finally identified him. And that took 12 years to actually identify him. So his remains were in Hawaii for 12 years waiting. And at this memorial service for him, I was introduced to a Mr. Gray, and he is the contact for the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. I mentioned Jessie to him. He took my business card and he wrote Jessie's name on the back. This organization is directly responsible for all the searching, identifying, notifying the family, and the return of our fallen. The Patriot Guard has taken it upon ourselves to assist in any way that we can to ensure that Jessie comes home and his family can celebrate finally him resting in peace. That's what I say. Thank you.
Mr. Tony Lee, representative of Buffalo Soldiers, what say ye of Jessie Leroy Brown?
I would ask you, who is this man? Who is Jessie Leroy Brown? He's you. He's me. He's all of us. It's upon his shoulders that we all stand. The deeds that we remember him by are the very deeds that will propel us into the future and our children into their futures. Jessie Leroy Brown was a Buffalo soldier. It was a term that many people of his era knew. Many people of our era do not. They think a Buffalo soldier is a person who does reenactments, who puts on a performance, but they don't realize that to be a Buffalo soldier is to live a tenet, to live with purpose, to leave wherever you are better than you found it, which is exactly what Jessie Leroy Brown did. He went into the military at a time when blacks were not considered capable of learning how to fly. He went into the military at a time when he was the only black pilot there, and he spent his time alone because there were none others other than Tom Hutner who would stand with him. He went into the military at a time when you could not be a black pilot and be as good as everyone else. You had to be better. You had to be stronger. You had to fight harder and still get no credit for it. 1950, December 4th, That's when the bullets found him in the sky and brought him down. But until that time, in the short 24 years that he spent on this earth, he spent those years living with honor, living with dignity, living with purpose. And it is that legacy that he leaves with us today, that we must live as he did, with honor, with dignity, and with purpose. So we ask, what exactly is a Buffalo Soldier? What was Jessie Lee Brown? He was a man that was given less than many others, but turned that into so much more than many others could with his entire life. It is upon his shoulders that we all stand today. 10 years after his aircraft was shot down, I joined the United States Navy. When Jessie Leroy Brown joined the Navy, he was told to become a mechanic, as you've heard. 10 years later, when I joined the Navy and told them I wanted to be a pilot, I was told the closest I would get to that aircraft was to clean it. Today, things are better, but they're better only because of Jessie Leroy Brown and people like him who have stood in that gap between then and now. They've left us with a challenge if we are brave enough to pick it up and carry it. That challenge is to pass on to those who come after us all of the things that have taken place to get them to where we are now. It didn't happen by accident. In 1866, the United States Army decided they needed more troops. They wanted to demoralize the South. They wanted the South to understand that those very people that you enslaved are now picking up arms and fighting against you for their freedom. As we go through the years, when I was in school and we were told President Lincoln freed the slaves, I would say no to that. I would say no because I think the slaves freed themselves by picking up that uniform, picking up those arms, and standing in front of those guns. They fought for their freedom, and they fight for our freedom. And it is our legacy now to continue that battle, not necessarily on a battlefield, perhaps in a classroom, perhaps in the boardrooms of big corporations, but we continue to fight for the freedom, for the education, for the dignity. And this is what the Buffalo Soldier stands for. The Buffalo Soldier is a person who picked up the uniform, wore that uniform, fought in one of our wars or more, gave what we had to give to come back to our families, to you. But the thing that we want you to see is that you are standing on the shoulders of all of those Buffalo Soldiers who stood before you. It's been 154 years now that Buffalo Soldiers have existed. In 1947, the United States government decided we're going to integrate the military. We're no longer going to have Buffalo Soldiers. The units that were all black were disbanded. Those troops were interspersed into a lot of other units. Now we are integrated. But that was only a de facto integration because in reality, those black troops were still looked upon as less than. Those troops still had to do more, study harder, and get less, but know that in their hearts they had given 130%, not just 100%. And that is the charge that we carry on today. So we remember them. We remember Jessie Leroy Brown. We remember what he gave us, what he told us, what he showed us. And we must carry it on. There's a group called MIA Remembered, which I'm honored to be a member of. And the people in this group are charged with trying to earn the money that it takes, because it takes money to find these troops that are still missing in action, that have never come home, whose parents, whose brothers, whose sisters, whose children have gone to their graves without knowing whatever happened to them. MIA Remembered came to me and they asked me, would I write a song for them? Would I write a song that when people hear this song, they would understand the battle that we still face today? The battle that lives out the creed that we as military people have sworn to, which is to leave no man behind. Did you know there are not 1,000, there are not 5,000, there are not 10,000 troops lying in some foreign land? There are 82,144 American troops that have not come home since World War II. 82,144. We need to bring them home no matter what, no matter how long. So I came to you with 3 questions, really. If not now, when? If that work does not start here, where? And if you do not start it, who? There is a song that I wrote, it's called Please Take Me Home. The first thing that you will hear in this song is the last thing these troops heard as they gave their lives for this nation of ours. And as that sound fades away, along with their life fading away, we will hear the souls of those 82,144 people pleading and crying out to us to come find them. And remember, Jessie Leroy Brown is one of them, asking us to please take him home.
We will search for you until the end of time. This afternoon, remembering and honoring Jessie and Daisy Brown, not only do we have speakers who's given us clear history, but we're honored to have some young people here to participate, some young professional adults as high school students. We'll be calling those individuals up. So first of all, Lauren Anthony, what say ye of Jessie Leroy Brown?
I, Lauren Anthony, say that Jessie Brown had a dream one day, on his knees picking cotton to Mississippi. As he looked up into the sky and saw an airplane flying overhead to his brother, Fletcher Brown. I'm going to be an American pilot of one of those airplanes one day.
Kiara Williams, what say ye of Jessie Leroy Brown?
I say Kiara. One day in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Jessie Brown asked his brother, Marvin, for a dime to go to the local movie theater to watch the old fire department airplane film called Hell's Angels. And there was a segregated balcony set up for Negro folks. For Jessie Brown, he visualized his dream to be an American pilot one day. Coming home to thank his brother Marvin for that dime he gave him to watch that movie, he said, I'm going to be an American pilot.
Marcus William Bailey. What say ye of Jessie Leroy Brown?
I, Marshall William Bailey, say, Jessie Leroy Brown, a sharecropper's son from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, had a dream one day to go to the Ohio State alma mater of his personal hero, Jesse Owens, who stood up for all Americans in the 1936 Olympics to overcome Adolf Hitler's racism. Jesse Brown found a way to attend Ohio State through self-determination.
Matt Benning, what say ye of Jessie Leroy Brown?
I, Matthew Benning, say, when Jessie Brown heard the advice of Flight Director Lieutenant Earl Dawkins that unless Jessie wanted to change his career path and be a mechanic to work on airplane engines, then Jessie would have no chance of success, as no Negro had ever integrated the pilot program. Jessie Brown needed to call upon his life partner, Daisy Brown, and together pray and recall the higher calling they had with their Baptist church upbringing to find a way to push forward and pass those tests to be the first African American to enter the U.S. Navy pilot program.
Araya Ford, what say ye of Jessie Leroy Brown?
I, Araya Ford, say of Jessie Brown, I am honored to repeat the words of the Rev. Ralph Anthony when he shared the last words of Jessie Brown recorded by the U.S. Navy to his friend Captain Tom Hunder, saying, "Tell my wife Daisy that I love her."
Brooklyn Ford, what say ye of Jessie Leroy Brown?
I, Brooklyn Ford, say, I am honored to repeat the words of historian D. Slade today, reminding all of Daisy's words. There is no better example of brotherhood, white or black, than what happened that terrible night at Simone.
Major General James Whitehead was to be here this evening to give his comments and his experience as one who related with the experience of Jessie Leroy Brown. We call Captain James Sullivan, what say ye? Final words of Jessie Leroy Brown.
I've got double blessings and double honors today. I was woken up at 7 o'clock this morning, preparing to come to this church by Major General James Whitehead. At 85 years old, his health is sometimes up and sometimes down. So in the closing remarks today, I'd just like to share with you his words, and he's with us in spirit. It was widely reported in the New York Times in July of 2013, in an interview with Captain Tom Hudner, Medal of Honor recipient, upon his return from North Korea. It is appropriate to raise the question today with the current administration, since Captain Tom Hudner's health at age 90 had prevented him to return for that gracious offer to attempt to recover the bones of Jessie Brown. So we ask from this house of worship, under the leadership of Pastor Oscar Anthony, is the offer of the 3 North Korean generals for Captain Hudner to return in September 2013, after the rainy season is over, and bring along the forensic POW MIA recovery team to search the town of Somong-ni for the remains of Ensign Jessie Brown. Thank you.
This was a great afternoon to commemorate, call it an afternoon to honor and remember Jessie Leroy Brown and his wife Daisy. I personally appreciate this interruption in my life, this education that I received, and the privilege of meeting you all, you presenters, to bring this very important historic hero and so many like him that are forgotten. We want to thank all of the speakers, the youth, who did a tremendous job. And we do want to pray that permission would be granted soon to bring back Mr. Brown bones back to America. We would like to also extend our thanks and appreciation to Mr. Crescendo Ward, producer of the Ward Dance Productions, for being here today from Los Angeles to record this historical event and testimony. We want to thank you. So at this time, we're going to end this time of memorial and celebration with a prayer. And we're going to ask that you continue to pray for this endeavor. Let's give a big hand of appreciation to Captain Sullivan, D. Slade, Tony Lee, Mr. Jim Jacobs, and the present Patriot Guard, for the Honor Guard, and for the youth and everyone who spoke, the adults, this afternoon. Thank you very much. Let's stand. We will end this with a prayer. Dear Father, we thank you for this community from far and wide who honestly and passionately remembered a man and woman you brought together in marriage during a very difficult, harsh, very painful time of hate, racism. Father, we thank you for men and women like Jessie and Daisy, who stood as great examples of love and grace and mercy and turning the other cheek. He, like so many, have given his life for this country. And we thank you for men like Captain Hudner, who went against the grain, who became friends with Jessie and risked his own life to save him. And there are many other heroes like him all throughout life. We ask that you help us to join our hearts together continually to work across differences. Help us to realize that God made us all different so we can celebrate and love each other with our differences. But we are saved because we are to live on earth as peace, men and women. Ask you to bless this effort to bring Mr. Brown Bones home. Give this committee favor with Congress, with the President, with the military. We thank you and we bless your name In Jesus' name. And everyone said,